Welcome to the Salt Sand Filtration Mixtures Lab, where we'll be studying the effects of physical and chemical properties on a salt sand mixture, doing some physical separation techniques. The first thing we're going to do is make sure you have your salt sand filtration lab sheet downloaded. If you want to look at the directions, you can look at the directions. You can follow along with me. Alright, so we're going to use the balance. The first thing we're going to do is find the mass of a clean, dry, empty 250 milliliter graduated cylinder. So we're going to put that, make sure we've hit re-zero on the balance. We're going to find the mass of it. And we have 118.07. 118.07. Feel free to pause the recording at any time if you need to get your data on the data sheet. We're now going to find the 400 milliliter graduated cylinder, and that's 157.57, as you can see that on your readout. I'm going to place that up underneath here. We're now going to take the weighing tray, and we're going to, you can take the mass of the weighing tray, but we're now going to take the weighing tray off, and we're going to pour in, using our scoopula and our container, we're going to pour in approximately 10 grams of the salt sand mixture. I'm not going to do quite 10 because I'm going to make sure that you guys have watched the video. So we're going to do 9.87 is the salt sand mixture, 9.87. We're now going to place that into our 250 milliliter beaker. One of the things we know about salt and sand is that water will dissolve the salt and leave the sand behind. So we're now going to dissolve the salt by adding 200 to the graduated cylinder. We're going to add approximately 40 milliliters of water and pour it into the 250 milliliter graduated cylinder. Put into the 250 milliliter beaker. For approximately 40 milliliters, give or take a little bit. We just want enough to dissolve the salt, but yet not so much water that we are not able to finish the filtering in a timely process. The more water we have, the longer it takes to filter. So as we stir, we are dissolving the sodium chloride into the water, and then we're able to filter that, and the filtering process will then allow us to filter the salt water away from the sand. Okay, I'm going to place our funnel in our iron ring on our ring stand under the 400 milliliter beaker underneath. We're now going to take our filter paper and show the proper filter paper. Fold the filter paper in half. Fold it in half again. You have one side you pull away from the three. You never want to poke the filter paper because then you'll have a hole in your filter paper and the filter paper then will not work. So we're going to pour the salt water, called the filtrate, through the filter paper. Some of the sand may come with it. We're not going to scrape out all the extra sand. When a solid stays inside a container and pouring the liquid away, that's called decanting. So we have decanted the salt water, the filtrate, from the mixture. So we had a heterogeneous mixture because we can see the difference between the parts. We have sand, we have water, we have table salt, three compounds. See the difference between the parts was heterogeneous. We have that left over. So we're separating based on the physical and chemical properties. So now the water is going to filter. We have a little bit of sand that will filter out. We're going to wait for this to collect, and then we will pick up the recording again. Now we're finally done filtering. It's been 15 minutes. So now we're going to take the water and we're going to start to boil it. So I've put it on the hot plate. As you can see, the hot plate is already preheated and we're going to start to boil it. At this point the filter paper is very wet. All right, it's a little drippy. It's really wet. We could try to weigh the filter paper, but we may introduce some air into that. Here, try to record, get the filter paper and the sand and everything together. So you can see and read the directions of and answer some of the questions why we're not going to weigh the filter paper. So we're going to let this boil I'll turn the recording back on when it starts getting close to the end, because we're not going to watch water boil. We're going to turn this off until it starts boiling. It's already starting to bubble because it was on 550 degrees. You can see it's starting to heat up. There's getting some mist on the inside of the beaker. It will not take long for this to start boiling, but I know you don't want to watch water boil. So we'll restart the video when it is ready to be about done. Wow, would you look at that? The water is boiling. You can see the steam coming off there. It's crazy how fast that boils. Just look at that. Would you just look at it? Look at that water boiling and the steam coming out of there. Well, eventually, this water is going to all evaporate, and you're going to see the salt popping out of there. You got to wear your safety glasses so that you don't get a hot salt kernel right in your eye. So we'll come back when it's almost ready to be finished boiling. We're getting really close. You can see it. You can hear it. It's sizzling. Almost all the water is boiled out. You're going to start seeing salt kernels start bouncing around inside of there, forming on the sides of the container. We're starting to evaporate the water out there. It's really exciting. This is what you've been waiting for this whole time. Even though you have not been on long, I've been waiting 10 minutes for this. You can hear it. Listen. You can see it. You can hear it. We're now going to use the beaker tongs and remove it from the hot plate. As soon as it stops sizzling, all the water's out of it. You can see the salt on the side of it, all coated on the side. We're going to let it cool and let the water on the inside of the container is going to start to evaporate. You can see we have now recollected all of the salt that was mixed in with the sand. So we went from a mixture of salt and sand together to salt left in the container in the beaker. Notice I'm using the beaker tongs to hold on to it. It's got the rubber coating, so I'm not going to drop it. All the water that was on the sides of the inside of the beaker is starting to evaporate due to the heat. We're going to set it here. We're going to let it cool for a couple minutes so that we can get an accurate reading of the beaker. Taking a reading of the beaker when it's hot makes it a little bit inaccurate, so we're going to wait for it to cool for a minute. Once it's cooled, we'll get our final reading and give you the final mass so that you can put it in your data table. I'll be back to you in about a couple minutes when the beaker has cooled. Our beaker now has sufficiently cooled. We're going to place it on the balance. So on your data sheet where it says mass of 400 milliliter glass beaker and salt after heating, you're now going to put, you can see on the balance, your answer. 160.42 grams. 160.42 grams. It keeps hovering back and forth between 0.41 and 0.42. As the beaker cools, the temperature change in there can alter it. So now it's settled on, we're going to put it at 160.41. So let's change that. 160.41 grams. You can see it is now changed. So from here, we are going to clean up. Part of the lab is cleaning up appropriately. We're going to clean up. We're going to finish answering our post-lab questions, which you're going to look on the data sheet and answer the post-lab questions. Question 10 on the 10 and 11 on the post-lab on the actual document says to calculate the percent of salt and the percent of sand. That's showing your work on the data sheet. You don't have to do that one. Just make sure you answer the next couple questions under the analysis and submit your work on eCampus. Thanks for watching the Salt Sand Filtration Lab. Hope you've enjoyed the separation that we've had, the physical chemical properties, looking at heterogeneous, homogeneous mixtures, and now we have finished this unit on salt sand with filtration.